Much better.
Oh, okay.
You know, the tea helped. I told you through a couple days.
Yeah, I mean, it's Earl Grey, so it's
Tea and scrumpets.
ish. Crumpets, not scrumpets.
It's from Dumb and Dumber.
I know.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's
Haven't
mailbag
seen that,
time.
It is.
Let's get to the mailbag.
I like the first
Good questions.
question because it really it plays all of your quirks, Steve. For a start, it says, if you were the Jets GM, obviously you attempted to be.
There's still hope.
Didn't go so well. If you were the Jets GM, they keep on being bad and ending up with one of the top 2 picks, meaning they'd be in a position to draft either Tua or Joe Burrow. Would you do the same thing that the Cardinals did? Have you seen enough of Darnold to come to the conclusion that you might move on and take a chance on a quarterback that you might have a higher grade on? Kind regards, Mark.
Yes.
Another polite one.
Yeah, it was very polite. We have some polite listeners. I would.
Shocker.
I'm not necessarily. It doesn't mean I'm giving up on Darnold.
No, I know. You would just take quarterbacks endlessly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would. Because here's the deal, right? So they got Quinnen Williams at number 3 last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? He's awesome. In college, he was awesome, right?
Right.
Looks like a slam dunk prospect. Let's say best case scenario happens with Quinnen Williams, and he becomes Aaron Donald light. Nobody's Aaron Donald, right?
Okay.
So he's like a top 5. Let's say he's a top 5 defensive tackle for the next 5 years. Using just wins above replacement as a proxy for how we're going to quantify this whole thing, he could be worth 3/4 of a win, 0.8 wins per year, right? So you kind of stack that up, and it's like, all right, that's a really good contribution on the defensive line. You've hit on a draft pick. Now, conversely, Sam Darnold, as an average quarterback, is worth about 2 wins per year. Now, that's obviously way more. It's not apples to apples because Quinnen would rank 5th or so in his wins above replacement, and Darnold at 2 would be like 20th, right? Mm-hmm. But if you go from say Darnold's worth 2 wins per year, and let's say a win and a half is more 20th, right? So he's like a win and a half. If Joe Burrow is worth 2 per year, and you've all of a sudden added a half win per season using WAR, then that improvement is just so much more valuable than the consistency that Quinnen Williams has given you with 0.7 wins per year.
Yeah, I mean,
that all makes sense.
Sort of. Ultimately, I think what you're saying is that quarterback is so important that the capacity they have to generate more wins above replacement or above the next guy is so much higher. So,
yeah.
Like the difference between any old stooge on the defensive line and Aaron Donald light is it's important, but in terms of actually changing the game and helping you win, it's not moving the needle as much as the difference between the 20th quarterback and the 10th.
Yeah, see, every other position in the NFL, you can kind of creep back toward average, but at quarterback, you got to creep toward elite.
Yes.
You have to just climb the ladder a little bit.
So that's the thing, right? The quarterback is, as much as it doesn't feel like there's that much difference between like the 20th best quarterback and the 10th, there is. And then there's another huge difference between the 10th and the 5th, and then the 5th and the 1st. Like there's just there's such a wide scale of how much those guys can help, all the way, from a guy that's basically there not to lose the game to a guy like Patrick Mahomes who's able to do insane things all by himself and, manufacture plays left, right, and center. Here's the tricky part, right? Here's another way of looking at it, right? I still believe that there's that handful of elite quarterbacks who, through the years, Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, Peyton, all these guys that are just sitting above everyone else. And for the most part, situations can change, and they're still going to produce, right? The next tier of quarterback, a little bit less so. You see somebody like Russell Wilson consistently really, really good, and now he's got this MVP case, right? So, quarterback play isn't always static, right? But the worse the quarterback becomes, the more they become dependent on supporting cast. So Dak Prescott is this really nice example, and this is where I think it gets tricky, right? If you look at Dak's PFF grades through the years, rookie year, low 80s, then he was in the 70s for 2 years, and now he's in the low 80s again, despite his production being the best it's been so far in the NFL. His production's been the best, all these advanced metrics, QBR loves him, and all these different things, right? So has Dak changed as a player?
Or has the situation around him changed? And for the whole year we're saying, look, Kellen Moore came in, started calling more play action, created more open throws. Amari Cooper's elite. You got a full season of him. A lot of things around him have changed. So this is the tricky part. If you're sitting on Sam Darnold and you say he's a mid-tier quarterback, do you invest all the resources to get a bunch of receivers, the offensive line, the right play caller, all these different things? Because you could build around that. Or do you go get a Burrow and a Tua and take the chance? All of this is risky, that Burrow or Tua or Herbert is marginally better than Sam Darnold. But if you're right, and they are better than Sam Darnold, that jump is a more impactful one than just the Amari Cooper situation, the Kellen Moore, like all these other things that have to happen.
The other thing is that because play isn't static and guys get better and guys get worse, even if regardless of whether it's dependent on the people around them or not. So the Jameis Winston scenario, right? This idea that if he ever puts together that season, we're Super Bowl bound, right, or MVP bound on the way. So let's say the Quinn and Williams thing. Let's say his baseline is reasonable, and then every 1 year he has an Aaron Donald season, right? Probably doesn't make a difference. It's going to generate them a win, right? It's going to be important somewhere. Might help a little bit, but that's not going to take them from being also rounds to Super Bowl, right? But if you have a quarterback who suddenly puts that together and goes from an average quarterback to having that MVP caliber season, that team goes from being almost doesn't matter where to championship game Super Bowl caliber team, right? Think of the Cardinals in 2015, the Panthers in 2015. Like that quarterback season takes a team from, it doesn't matter where the hell you were, we're going to the playoffs and we're making some noise because the quarterback is that important. So even if you have a guy that you think will be, reasonable, if he has that season, good things happen.
Yeah, so the debate for me is more about am I willing to take the mid-tier quarterback, so to speak, and build a whole bunch of stuff around him, especially offensively, to just maximize his production. There's no better way to win in the NFL than to maximize your offensive pass game production. Mm-hmm. And again, not it's quarterback stats, but it's offensive passing production. The quarterback is the biggest factor in that, but there's other factors, obviously. So the best way to win is to either maximize your offensive passing production or your defensive pass game production. The easiest, it's hard to bank on the defensive part, so you want to build that offense. So the bigger debate for me is, do I build around this guy, or do I just continue to take shots at that quarterback until I get to the Matt Ryan rule?
Yeah, obviously it depends on your evaluation of Tua and Burrow, or which one remains at the time you pick. But from the Jets' point of view specifically, there's no way you can have seen enough from Sam Darnold right now to be convinced that he's still the guy going forward. Now, he might be, and you might still be confident that he can get there, but banking on that at this point would seem silly.
Yeah, so that's
you just can't. What you've seen so far, there's no way you could be absolutely sure that he's going to pull it around.
That's the tricky part, and that's where I think teams get into problems. And nothing against Andy Dalton here in Cincinnati, nothing against Ryan Tannehill, who's playing pretty well right now for the Titans, but those are examples of guys who teams invested in. They gave them 7 or 8 years, and at some point it's like, hey, you kind of know what they are after 4 or 5 years. And unless they're a top 10 guy, you should have been flirting and dating and
so that's the thing.
Looking elsewhere.
It's not that Sam Darnold, there's no chance of him becoming that guy. It's that you now are presented with an opportunity that doesn't come around that often, right? You're now picking one or two. You have a chance at one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the draft. Do you pass that up because of whatever you believe the percentage chance of Darnold getting it is? To me, given how important the quarterback position is, I would basically say there's very few circumstances under which you should pass that opportunity up, because it just doesn't come along very often. That's the idea with, the Giants picking at 2 and taking Saquon. Now, okay, look, we're talking about Sam Darnold as in he hasn't necessarily worked out, but that doesn't mean the decision to pass on him is right? The idea that you get to pick number 2, the last time the Giants picked that high was like 1981 or something. So it just doesn't come along that often, right? So if you now have this chance and you believe in the guy, the Joe Burrow or Tua, whichever one you have left, you need to be like 100% convinced that the guy you have already there is better.
So the other thing too, I think Pat Shurmur's done a pretty good job with the offense. given what they have. I thought Daniel Jones has looked reasonable. Eli wasn't the passing production last year wasn't that bad in New York with Eli, a bottom third quarterback at the helm, right? So I'm going to give Pat Shurmur some credit. I wonder what Sam Darnold would look like with Shurmur rather than the situation he had last year in New York or this year.
Oh, the situation around him isn't good, so that's not helping.
And I'm not saying the playmakers are great with the Giants, but the Jets have a worse situation, and there's no evidence that their play callers or system or anything like that is doing Darnold any favors.
Right. Like you're not, I mean, you wouldn't be getting the number 1/2 overall pick if the situation around the quarterback was rosy. That's a problem as well.
So I think ultimately, let's say they have an opportunity to get Joe Burrow, and I think the two difficult parts here is, first off, you're in New York. So as soon as you draft Joe Burrow, I mean, it's just story after story, and Manish is making stuff up about, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's the new Tom Brady.
Why you got to throw Manish under the bus?
Oh, because he's just a terrible troll. Like 3 weeks ago, he was talking about, all right, it's Monday Night Football. New England Patriots fans are nervous, and they should be. And then 3 hours later, Sam Darnold's seeing ghosts, and he's like, blow it all up. Gase's got to be fired. Like the guy's ridiculous.
Okay.
So
fine, sure.
Is he not? Anyway,
you tell me.
So you got to deal with like the emotional aspect of it. But like I keep saying, I would say, look, Sam, you're still competing for the starting job. Joe Burrow, you're competing for the starting job. One of you, I'm going to do my best to try to figure out if Burrow actually has it or if he's a one-year wonder at LSU. And at the end of it, even if I wasted the number 3 pick on Joe Burrow and I have to flip it for a second rounder later, and you're selling them for 50 cents on the dollar, it's still worth the risk, right?
I agree.
Potentially hitting like the Antonio Brown stuff earlier in the year. I think for the Patriots signing him, it was actually worth the risk and the potential, all the headaches that came out of it, because the upside is so great. And then in hindsight, anytime a guy misses on a quarterback, or you screw up, like Antonio Brown gets released after a week, whatever it is, everybody's like, oh, that's a stupid move. But I think from a risk-reward standpoint, the high reward type of stuff is worth it.
Yeah, quarterbacks, I think it's just the opportunity thing. It's if you think this guy is as good, like it's the Kyler Murray thing. And it's easier for the Jets because it's 2 years down the line, not 1, right? I think you have to give the Cardinals a ton of credit for making that move after 1 year. A lot of teams, I think, would have been like, it's too soon to write off the last first-round pick. Let's take a defensive tackle or whatever, number 1. The Cardinals went, no, look, we think that he is this much better than the guy we already had in the building. Sorry, Josh, I know it's a little bit harsh given how crappy a situation you had last year, but bye-bye. We're going to take Kyler.
A part of it's having humility, too, and having the humility to say, hey, fan base, I know I told you to invest in this guy after year 1, but I'm humble enough to know that, first off, my evaluations aren't perfect. Secondly, something a little bit nicer may have come along, and we're just going to
And I'm not saying they've done a great job overall, but that specific move, I think you have to give them credit for understanding how that works. A lot of teams, I don't think, would have made that move.
And look, again, I know people say, well, they should have traded Rosen earlier, and they only got a second for him and all that stuff.
Right.
But if you go back and you say, to find Kyler Murray.
And you can debate the actual mechanics of how you did it, but just deciding we're going to move on from him, take the guy we thought was better, I think is hugely commendable.
But you step back and you say, to find Kyler Murray, they invested the 10th overall pick in the draft, and then the 1st overall pick in the draft, and then they got a second rounder back in exchange for finding what we think is their guy. Well worth it. Teams do that all the time. They give up multiple first rounders to go find Deshaun Watson and go get Patrick Mahomes and all that stuff.
All right, I got 2 more questions, and then I want to drop something on you.
Oh, great.
This one is from Twitter from a guy called Pangzo, I believe. He says, after the Jeffrey Simmons injury, how much would you value injuries in the draft if Dylan Moses comes out and is he still a first-round prospect because he used to play like that, or are there more concerns? And the Titans, and are the Titans just a franchise that likes to take bigger risks than needed? So I think generally with this is something that I want to get George and Eric, the data science guys, to really dig into at some point. I think this area in the draft is a huge area where you could essentially gain massive levels of edge versus everybody else.
Still value.
Quantifying some of this stuff, right?
Yep.
Figuring with the the way rookie contracts work, with the fifth-year option for first-round picks, with understanding what a loss of a season makes in quantifiable terms, basically understanding where the balance of all this fits and say, okay, I got a guy who tore his ACL. I'm pretty confident he's going to be, a dominant player, so I'm going to get 4 years of him instead of 5. Where that should, land. Where should you still take him in the first because you get the extra year, the fifth-year option? Should you let him fall to the second, take him there, and even if and knowing that he misses a year, it's still a steal because you get those 3 years of rookie contract. I think this whole area can be gained out from a mathematical standpoint. I'm eager for the chance, for the point where they get a chance to dig into it.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and I think the way that you gain value in this area is the whole concept of trading down and accumulating more picks. The more picks that you have, the more you might be willing to take an injury risk. That's why I thought the Raiders had their 3 first-round picks last year, and the Dolphins right now going forward have all these picks. Give me all those guys.
And I think obviously
it comes back to the risk-reward thing. I want the high reward potential there.
And it obviously depends on what the injury is, right? Like some injuries are sort of long-term risks, right? He's got this could be a potential problem down the line. Some injuries are just he tore his ACL. He's going to be back in 7 months these days, the way ACLs work, and we expect him to be the same player when he does. Like, if that's the situation you're presented with, I would still take that guy in the first round if he was a first-round talent, because I'm going to get 4 years of him. With the fifth-year option, that's still well worth it to me. Now, I'm speaking, this is entirely based off like hunch, right? We haven't dug into the math yet. The math may say, actually, you know what, value-wise, it's not worth it. For the loss of that year makes it not worth it. But for me, if I was confident that this guy was going to come back the same player, I would take him in the first round and keep that extra year of his rookie contract.
My hunch is that the math would play this out, because 4 years at a quarter of a win above someone else would kind of outweigh things. Depends on the position, of course, and all that stuff. But again, like the 49ers draft in 2017, they had Solomon Thomas at number 3, and they got Reuben Foster at the end of the first round. For whatever happened off the field with Reuben Foster, I thought he was the perfect guy that, assuming X amount of things check out. I'm just so careful every time I say anything here. But give me the guy that's projected to go top 10, and I'll take him at 32 or 31 or wherever they got him in the back end of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it doesn't work out, I still feel like the process is sound. Again, assuming other things check out off the field, the process is sound. I'll do that all the time.
So there's the next question is from a guy called Stefan Altmaier, whose little mini nickname thing is STO with an umlaut, I think.
With a who?
An umlaut. I think it's a German, the 2 little dots above the top. I think that's an umlaut.
Timo, little help here.
And then FF, which I believe is either stiff or stiff. I don't know.
Stefan.
Yeah, he actually is
Stefan.
Well, Steph would be the O with the umlaut thing. I think that changes the O sound to an eh. Anyway, how good is Aaron Jones, and why isn't anybody talking about him the same way they're talking about Christian McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook? Can I answer this? Because it's really easy.
Yeah.
The reason they're not talking about him in those terms is because the Packers insist on handing X amount of carries to Jamal Williams. He is every bit as good as those two. In fact, if you look at our overall running back grades, Josh Jacobs is number 1, right? Christian McCaffrey 2, Aaron Jones is 3, and then we have Austin Eckler and Dalvin Cook. So he's in that group, but the difference is Dalvin Cook has 203 carries, Aaron Jones has 134, and the difference between the two of them is that Jamal Williams has 65.
Yeah.
So he is literally stealing the amount of carries that he trails guys like Dalvin Cook and to a lesser extent Christian McCaffrey.
So I would say the conversation's also different because you have Christian McCaffrey racking up a ton of yards with Kyle Allen at quarterback. So they're like, well, Kyle Allen's an undrafted free agent. He's not good. Christian McCaffrey's carrying this offense. And you have the Vikings, who are dedicated to just take the ball out of Kirk Cousins' hands and let him throw 10 times per game if they can. They're running the offense through Dalvin Cook. And then, oh, by the way, Kirk Cousins is also putting up a good statistical season. So I think there's this perception that the Carolina offense runs through McCaffrey. The Vikings offense runs through Dalvin Cook. And with Aaron Jones, I don't think people are wrong if they think, well, it's Aaron Rodgers' offense, where if you do get into the inside the 10 a lot and you give Aaron Jones a bunch of handoffs, he's going to get into the end zone. That is happening a lot. He's awesome, but he also has a million touchdowns. What's he got, 14 touchdowns now?
It's 13? A lot, yeah.
He's got a million touchdowns this year, in part because he's gotten a ton of opportunities. He's doing a great job with those opportunities. He's running well. All of those guys do a really nice job above and beyond what run blocking.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be aided more by his quarterback than the other two, simply because of who the quarterbacks are. But even if you look at receiving as well, again, he's behind Christian McCaffrey because McCaffrey might be the best receiving back in the NFL, but he's ahead of Dalvin Cook in terms of PFF receiving grade. So I think ultimately the answer is he is in that bracket, but he is just shafted by the fact that they hand a bunch of his carries to other people.
Yeah, he dropped that one seam route too. That would help the receiver.
That didn't hurt. Yeah. So
no, but they've used him at times creatively in the screen game out wide and all that stuff. So. Put him in that conversation.
Yeah, so that's my answer. So now I'm going to drop something on you, right?
Oh boy.
There's no way we basically have to at this point talk about Colin Kaepernick because the NFL apparently has arranged for him to have a workout in front of all 32 teams, albeit on a Saturday, and who knows who can actually make it to that, but whatever. So the only way we can have this conversation is in this format where you can actually have some nuance and we're not restricted to 280 characters where people might misinterpret what we're saying.
Oh, they will.
They'll do it anyway, but at least there's context here, right? We can throw the whole thing at them and say, here it is. So the Kaepernick thing is interesting, right? So leaving aside the whole idea of him being blackballed and all that kind of stuff, which seems pretty clear that happened at some point, right? Let's just talk about Kaepernick, the player, and what he can bring to an offense now, where he belongs, how it should function, all that kind of stuff. And the first thing I want to mention is where exactly he was when he last played, right? Because this is what a lot of people point to. It's, he had 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's an incredible ratio. Therefore, Kaepernick was fantastic when he left the league. Therefore, he should be a starting player on a Pro Bowl, on a Super Bowl bound team, right?
Yeah.
But his PFF grade that year was actually one of the worst of his career.
57.8.
Yes. And it's not that PFF system just doesn't like Kaepernick, because back in 2012, where they went, on that run, his grade was way higher. It was 78.8. His passing grade was 82.7. He was really good that year within Greg Roman's offense, right?
Yes.
But that last season, essentially, we talk all the time about sometimes box score statistics mesh with PFF grades. Sometimes when you actually watch and grade every single throw, it ends up somewhere completely different. Now, it may be higher. The grade says he's actually way better than his box score numbers. He's had some bad luck. Things have bounced against him, all that kind of stuff. Or it may go the other way. Sometimes the PFF grade is significantly worse than your box score statistics because, let's say, a bunch of interceptions got dropped or whatever, right? Some of the plays are hidden in fumbles. Whatever the reason. Sometimes they don't mesh, and this is an example of that happening. So, again, a good example you like to throw, look at the fumbles, right?
He had the
fumble grade that year,
worst.
25.
He had the lowest fumble grade in the NFL that year.
Yeah. So these are things that play into that. But the bottom line is that Kaepernick that season was really not very good, despite the fact that those statistics look really healthy. The touchdown-to-interception ratio says that he was great. Actually, not so much. That being said, there are, at least 64 quarterback jobs in the NFL. A lot of teams carry 3 quarterbacks, so let's turn that into 75, whatever. There's 75 quarterback jobs, and there's no real way that he isn't one of the 75 best quarterbacks in the world, right?
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, to back up even further, there was a point in Kaepernick's career when I was a young analyst, and I saw some of the high-end stuff that he did, and I was like, man, if you could just teach him some of the easy stuff. It's a lot of things we say about, like, a Josh Allen or some of the other guys around the league right now. Kaepernick's has a cannon for an arm. Mm-hmm. Doesn't always have the best touch, so that's why some of the short stuff isn't great. And he never really developed great short area accuracy, but he can do high-end stuff. And, of course, the rushing ability, the thing I liked about his rushing ability compared to, say, like an RG3 or Michael Vick, we always talk about these guys who can avoid hits. I thought Kaepernick had that good feel for how do I get to the sideline quick enough to not take a big hit or whatever and remain durable. So there was a point in 2012 and into 2013 where he looked like man, I mean, this is top 10 quarterback potential, the run pass, ability and all that type of stuff. That never really progressed. When we get to the 2016 season, that was under Chip Kelly. And no matter what you believe about Chip Kelly and his career in the NFL, there were probably some, when he got personnel control in Philadelphia, there maybe were some questionable decisions. But this morning, everybody's talking about Greg Roman and how he's elevated every quarterback he's had. Kaepernick, Tyrod, Lamar. True. Go back and look at Chip Kelly and in the baseline of quarterbacks he's worked with and then their peak season. Other than my boy Sam Bradford, everybody got better. Nick Foles had 27 touchdowns and 2 picks in 2013. Mark Sanchez had like an 89 passer rating in 2014 under Chip Kelly. He was good. Like he had good stats. And then there was Bradford, and then in 16, Blaine Gabbert looked reasonable.
So that's where I was going to go. Right?
And Colin Kaepernick had the 90 passer rating, 16 touchdowns, 4 picks that people are citing. I think a lot of the Chip Kelly scheme, and they were playing in garbage time, there was a lot of factors that went into those stats. And, of course, the fumble grade that we said, we're downgrading. That's why you had a 57 grade. That's not showing up in the stats.
And also, I think you can mitigate some of that grade by the fact that he did get hurt. He lost this ton of weight. He had to come back, get the job back. There's no way the 2016 Colin Kaepernick was 100% of what Colin Kaepernick can be. I mean, obviously, right, because we have higher grades in the 4 of the 5 previous seasons. So we know that's not as good as he can be. But clearly getting hurt, losing all the weight, having to win, get the job back when he got healthy, there's no way that was the version of Kaepernick that we would expect had he played the next year and beyond. What interests me is, all right, let's assume that most teams are not going to see him as a starting quarterback because, frankly, they haven't been wanting to touch the guy for 3 years. So if anybody's signing him after this workout thing, it's going to be as a backup, right?
Yep.
It's just the reality of the situation. There's clearly nowhere he fits better than Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
They're running an offense where he would be a dynamic threat. They're using an offensive coordinator that worked with the guy in the past and got his best season out of him. They have RG3 as their current backup, and we talked on Monday about he just doesn't look like the same athlete that he used to, let alone what he can do as a passer.
There's a good shot Kaepernick's better than RG3
This is where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, is Trace McSorley on the active roster, or is he sitting on the practice squad for that?
Really put me on the spot here.
I know. Sorry about that. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. I don't know that either. But let's assume that whatever it would be a like-for-like swap, RG3 or Kaepernick, I think he could be really good in that system. I mean, obviously he's not going to play unless Lamar Jackson gets hurt or they run that triple option offense. But he could be really good within that system.
Well, first off, I'm assuming he's willing to be a backup at this point. I mean, that was part of the issue as well. Right.
Reports are that he's happy to take any job that's going.
Okay.
Essentially.
So if he's willing to take any job,
or at least is willing to talk about any job.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like, one of the more obvious ones.
Who else makes sense? So Ravens makes too much sense for me to look beyond. Who else makes any kind of sense?
I mean, just as a backup, or
no, I mean,
he could actually upgrade.
You want to upgrade the starting spot?
I'm asking.
I mean, I would see it. Like I say, I don't think anybody is touching him as a starter. Therefore, it makes sense to look at backup gigs for me. But if you want to insert him into the starting role for somebody, I'm all for it. Let me hear it.
I mean, does he upgrade the Bears?
Oh, wow. He does, doesn't he? Wow. That would be fascinating.
Yeah.
Especially for a team that is not overburdened with draft capital heading forward to fix the quarterback position that they presumably want to get fixed at this point.
Right.
If you're the Bears, you're going to need to address the quarterback situation in some creative ways. And, we've been talking about off-season runs at Tannehill or Teddy Bridgewater, or, because they're not going to be in a position to get one of the top draft quarterbacks. So, yeah. I mean, this is a shot to nothing of, let's see.
If you put all the other stuff aside, and the goal is to just find, look, I probably, at this point, if I'm the GM, I don't want to build I'm not going to build around Colin Kaepernick.
No, and you don't have
in his career.
I think you can plug him in to what Matt Nagy was doing a year ago, and you're significantly better off.
Yes. I think the Bears, much like I think the Bills, should be in looking for, just like we talked about Darnold and the Jets, like everybody should be looking for quarterbacks, all these guys.
Okay.
Right? the Dolphins, the Redskins with Dwayne Haskins are still looking for the next quarterback. I would not put Colin Kaepernick in that mix. So for all these teams, the Bears, the Bills, the teams that might be looking to move on from their starter, the Titans, like all these teams, right? I wouldn't put Kaepernick in this mix like, hey, he could be our guy in 2020, but in a short
32 at this point. So we've reached the point where people are probably not seeing him as any kind of long-term answer, even if they did think he was a quality starting answer.
So, like, if I'm the Bills for the rest of the year, I'd still kind of roll with Josh Allen.
Right.
Like, if I'm the Bears, I'd still probably roll with Trubisky, but I think that's where I would consider things. You know, he could be a guy you bring in. He could be a bridge quarterback next year while you're getting back to the draft capital you need to find the next guy.
Yeah, that makes some sense. The other thing I think that, you know, you've got to at least acknowledge is he's been out of the game, for 3 full years at this point?
Yeah, I have no idea what he is.
Right, and that's the thing, right? We talk all the time about players aren't what they used to be. Players change, and the biggest problem with that is when they change and you haven't seen them.
Right.
So, I mean, this is part of what a workout does, I guess, but it's not the same, right? This idea of a backup quarterback can sit on the bench for like 10 years and people assume he's the same guy he was when he first sat down there. It's like, who knows what this guy is like right now? He could have completely driven off a cliff and nobody noticed.
Yeah.
Because he's just been sitting on the bench for 10 years.
I mean, just really quick to add to like the last time that we saw him, a grade in the 50s. The previous year, the grade was in the 40s. And that last year, when everybody's citing, he had a 90 passer rating. He had the 4th highest percentage of yards coming after the catch, behind Alex Smith, the king of yak, rookie Jared Goff, who could barely even complete a pass.
Yes.
Sam Bradford, who completed a high number of passes, but 6.6 average depth of target.
That was the year, yeah. Where it was,
yeah,
he like broke the completion percent record, but it was because he was throwing from here to here.
He made Alex look aggressive.
Yes,
he made him blush with all of his checkdowns, and then Kaepernick was 4th behind that trio.
Yeah,
so again, please don't cite his stats from 2016 as to why he deserves a starting job and how he's going to carry teams to the playoffs.
Well, you can cite the stats, just don't use the touchdown to interception ratio because
or the
other
passer rating or anything like that. Yeah.
Go deeper, right? Those stats are box score numbers. They do not tell you the whole story. Dig a little bit deeper and you find other numbers that illustrate why his grade wasn't as high.
But if you have a bottom third quarterback, he's probably worth a look to see what he has. And if you are a team maybe like the Bears that might have a salvageable season, worth investigating potentially.
Absolutely. I mean, not investigating for a team like the Bears would be negligent, right? Yeah. The idea that there's a potential quarterback sitting here for nothing that could upgrade your situation, and you don't even look at it. That's
at the same time, I don't even know if he upgrades over Chase Daniel, to be honest, based off a little bit of what we've seen from Chase.
What we saw last, and B, what 3 years of not playing has done. Because as we say, it can completely change a guy, and you have no earthly idea what he is right now. So that's one reason why you go to the workout. But again, if you're a team like Chicago, it's worth the roll of the dice, right? Because of the potential. What we talked about earlier, this idea of what a guy could be, the potential upgrade is worth taking a swing on.
Yeah.
Like if literally all it costs you is burning a roster spot for a few weeks, like we can live without the 4th safety on the depth chart for a fortnight if we need to carry Kaepernick on the depth chart and see what he looks like after 3 years not in the game.
So that was going to be my next point that I was going to drop on you.
Oh, yeah? Go.
What can you glean from a workout?
I would say not a whole lot.
Just think about this. We always poo-poo pro days. We always joke about how stupid pro days are.
Look, I think you can see, is he in good shape? That's job one, right?
Okay.
If we're looking at him, if we're a team like the Bears, you need to know, first of all, is this even sensible for this year?
Right.
So is he in shape? Can he come in tomorrow, practice, play a game, and not look like us on the basketball court, right? That would be job one. 2, they are saying they're going to schedule interviews during this thing. I think at the very minimum.
I think that's probably the most important.
It's important to sit down, talk this out, figure out what it's going to look like. What are your plans if we bring you in? All this kind of stuff, right? It's not my job to determine what you do with that information, but NFL teams want to know that stuff, right?
You know what's going to happen, though. Colin Kaepernick completes 98% of his passes at his workout, looks the part, he's got good velocity, he's ready to go. All right, NFL, your move. That's going to be the story.
Oh, yeah, and we're going to spend a week talking about who didn't turn up to it.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right? No, this GM didn't show up to the.
Why does New England not believe Colin Kaepernick's better than Tom
Why
Brady?
did Bill Belichick not show up to Kaepernick's workout in Atlanta on a Saturday?
Because he's, got a game the next day.
But yeah, so I mean, I think you're not going to figure out if he can play in the live shooting environment of an NFL game, but you can find out, is he in shape, and is it a mesh?
The interview,
right? And is it a mesh from a personal standpoint and that kind of stuff? Then at that point, you can bring him in and find out what it looks like in practice and what it looks like, if it comes to it in an active game.
So that's when you're going to really know if there's
that's when you'll figure it out.
There.
But as I say, all this should be doing is confirming for you that it's worth a roster spot and whatever a few weeks of a vested veteran salary is, which is to say not an awful lot in the grander scheme of things.
All right.
So
have we been nuanced enough that we've pissed everybody off?
Probably, yeah. That's our Kaepernick discussion with nuance that will be somehow distilled down into PFF thinks Kaepernick sucks.
Or that he's going to carry the Bears
to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's run with it any way you'd like.
Yes, just don't tag us in it, please.
So that's it. Wednesday morning pod. We hit on
Kaepernick, but you didn't see that coming.
Hot button topics. That was not on my to-do list.
No, it wasn't.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's our live Wednesday show. We'll be back tomorrow live on YouTube and, of course, anywhere you guys listen to the PFF NFL podcast on your podcast devices.
Podcast machines, yeah.
The machines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Music time.
Yeah. I mean, stop talking.
We're out.
We are.
No, Ken. Wait, I got more to say.
No, don't do it.
Okay, now we're out.
I'm out. I don't care what you do.
Bye, guys. Have a good Wednesday.